Hello and welcome to Arrow's What Is series. My name is Steve Horrobin and I manage Arrow's pre-sales team within Arrow's modern data center practice. Today we're going to be asking, what is a data center? So the first thing we need to do is probably go back a little bit and have a look at where data centers started. So if you're okay and you can see my paper, I will scribble away. So what is a data center? So when people started putting computer systems into offices, it's kind of it's all about scale really. So we're talking of small computers in offices, and this tended to be kind of a tower-based server. You may have a CD drive and other forms of drives inside the tower. And then some storage space as well, not storage for your pens and pencils, but storage for your digital assets. But this may well be your first computer, your first foray into putting together a multi-user kind of server for your entry-level data center, as we call it. What's happened from this point has been people obviously started to put these into offices, as I say, and we have these then appearing in offices, maybe under desks, maybe 2 or 3 of these sitting side by side. And this is kind of the growth of our first kind of data center. Now people rapidly moved on from this. Maybe the form factor changed. So we've now moved from a kind of a tower-based server. And we move over to a rack-based server. And a rack-based server is exactly what it says. It is a server designed to sit in a rack. And again, some pretty pictures just to add to this. So all of the information that previously we would have run on a tower server, we're now moving into the rack server space. So this provides us with more growth, more capability, more functionality, the option for more connectivity. And people started to put rack servers into offices. Now the thing with a rack server, obviously by the name of the device, you need to have a rack. So then we started to see racks being put into office spaces. So we'll go on to racks in another episode, but what we have here is some of the rack servers that may be installed inside a rack. And again, we have a lot more storage space inside here, other connectivity options on the front of the server. So what we're starting to do now is to build out a number of servers that are going to fit inside our rack. And we can also have networking as well. So we may have some network switches inside here. We may also have some dedicated storage devices. So this will be very, very storage heavy. So now we're starting to put a lot more devices into a rack. If you're still maintaining this kind of technology in a rack, in an office environment, you've now got a few problems. So you've now got the requirement for power, and that is certainly going to go up, because each of these devices that you have inside here will need to be connected to power. The other problem you're going to have is heat. And each of these devices, again, is producing heat into the room where this rack may be positioned. So what you need to start and do is to consider these other facets of the rack and the computing technology and make sure that you're doing the best to maintain the most optimal operating environment. So we've gone from a single tower server to multiple tower servers under a desk in an office. We've now moved up to rack-based servers and now moving up to a rack with a considerable number of servers and storage and networking. So now we start to move into some sort of dedicated room where we may house this equipment. So this is now getting near to what we call the data center. So we may have a computer room, we'll call this. It'll have some sort of key card access for security. But what we're doing now is we're bringing all of this technology from the rack into a dedicated room that can manage all the technology correctly. So it can provide the right amount of power, the right amount of cooling. So when we start to look inside our computer room, we are going to have our rack inside the computer room. We are going to have some form of air conditioning. So that's going to help us with the problems of the heat that's being produced by all of the technology in these racks. What we also need to consider is some sort of power distribution as well. So we have a power distribution unit that can also be installed inside this new computer room that we've started to assemble. Gives us a bit more space as well inside the computer room, so we may now decide to put in some more racks. Maybe our business has grown, we need to have some more technology, we need to have some more switching inside there, we need to have some more storage. So things are going to grow from a single tower server under a desk now into a dedicated computer room where we have all this technology. Now, if we start to look at this in even a greater scale, then what we'll do is I'll have a look at this from a plan perspective. And if we look down inside the computer, we will now have a number of air conditioning units around the walls of our computer room. And we'll have a number of power distribution units as well, so we have our PDUs. But inside the main space of the computer room, we now have racks of racks. We now have a considerable number of racks sitting side by side. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We may have another 6 racks sitting opposite that as well. So you can see the way that the data is growing, the computing is growing, the networking is growing. And we're now having this large computer room where we have our air conditioning, so it's providing all the cold air to keep this technology cool. And then we also have the power distribution as well, providing the power for all the types of servers and storage and networking that we're putting into this new computer room. So what's inside the computer room? How does it work? Well, basically, we have what they call a raised floor. So if we look at the floor being here, it's starting to draw all over myself, which is great. We can put some cabinets inside our computer room. And then underneath the floor, we have the capability for airflow. So this provides us with the ability to direct the cold air to where we need it to go. So again, we'll have the air conditioning unit on the side. The air conditioning unit will then blow the cold air into this void underneath the computer room floor. So what that allows us to do now is to put some vents in the center of the 2 rows of racks, so the cold air can be directed through the vents into the central aisle between our 2 rows of racks. And this is called a cold aisle and containment. So we have a cold aisle in the middle of our 2 rows of racks. So we have the front of the equipment and then the front of the equipment facing each other. So basically when we put the technology together, the servers, the storage, the networking, the air flow inside the servers to maintain an optimal cooling for the device is from the front of the device through fans and then out of the rear of the device. So by having the cold air targeted to come up that middle central aisle, then it's perfectly positioned then to go into the racks, into the technology, and then we'll have the hot air, quickly switching over to a red pen, we'll have our hot air coming out of the rear of the cabinets. The hot air then will circulate inside the computer room, back into the top of our air conditioning unit, ready to be chilled and pumped back in under the floor. So this is kind of the modern data center design. A lot of things have kind of moved on from here. You can have data centers of various different scales. You can have 1 or 2 racks. You can have 20, 30, 40 racks in some of the big corporate data centers. But what we're finding now as well is a little bit of evolution from here. When we take our kind of our data center as we've just looked at with our 2 rows of racks, and PDUs. We'll talk on PDUs in a separate video. And we have our AC units. When organisations now start to move forward, they are conscious of the costs associated with running this type of environment. So there's a number of options that you can have. You can either have something called an in-source, where you have services provided by a separate agency. So basically you have staff that can come in and manage your environment inside your own data center. You can also outsource, so you can have the whole of your data center moved into another location somewhere else. And this, you may hear the term co-lo, which is co-location. So here you have a separate organization that spends some time building data centers, being able to provide resources for organizations that may want to move into a very large data center where they can have the economies of scale and also have the people on site able to manage the technology. So all of this computing equipment that may have been managed by the organization initially could now be moved into some sort of co-lo organization and move the equipment across and have the people associated with the co-lo organization to manage your computer systems. So basically they will be watering it and feeding it, making sure there's suitable power, cooling, and making sure that they're secure, which is one of those key things. You need to be able to provide certain levels of security when you're moving this kind of data around. And the other option, which you may consider, and obviously a lot of people are doing that today, is the movement to cloud. You could decide that now's the right time to move to cloud. I have an expensive data center, I'm paying a lot for it, I've got all my air conditioning costs, all my power costs, but now may be the right time to consider moving to the cloud. I can take my servers, my storage, my networking, and move everything across into the cloud. And there's a number of cloud service providers in the marketplace today. So again, a separate video will go through cloud providers. So I hope that's given you a little bit of an introduction today as to what is a data center. Just to recap on what we've gone through, as I said initially, it's all about scale. We started from a single tower server. We've added in maybe 2 or 3 or 4 tower servers. But then we've moved over to rack server technology, which obviously is designed to fit in a rack. And when you get into multiple devices in a rack, you have the heat and the power that you've got to monitor, measure and manage, and that can cause a lot of headache for people. Then you move into your computer room, you have a larger computer room, more racks, you have even more racks in your computer room, so you're growing over time as you bring in more applications, more technology, more storage. And then later on, as I say, there's a possibility that you may have an agency come in to manage your data center. You may be able to move your data center equipment out to a colo provider, or you may even consider the movement to the cloud. Okay, so I hope that's been an introduction to what is a data center. I thank you for taking your time to watch this video, and I look forward to talking to you on a future episode of Arrow What Is. Thank you very much.